Hello aspirants, very warm welcome to you all. My name is Madhusudan Reddy and in today's session we shall be covering up our next theme, that is the resource and development. In the last lecture or in the last theme we have discussed about the resource and development. I have given a brief introduction about few definitions of population, right? And we have also discussed about the agriculture, what are the different types of agricultures, how the agriculture is done at various places. In today's lecture, again, this is also going to be an introductions into the trade, transport, human settlements, where do people live and how do people live. So basically, we have dealt few backgrounds that are associated with this topic in the physical geography itself. For example, if you look into the chapters that we are going to discuss today are from class 7, class 8 and class 12. Now these three classes, the chapters are one which talks about how the life is there in the deserts, how the life is going to be there in the areas of tropical latitudes, how the life is going to be there in the equatorial region. This is the settlement side, right? This is on the settlement side. But on the other side, you come and look, it talks about life in the deserts as well as it talks about the human resource. This human resource we have discussed in the previous class as well. The chapter is repeated. It is because sometimes when you read the chapter again, it will give you a very good insights into this, right? Now come to the class 12. This is where you have to focus more because these are very basics. Even you can finish this chapter in just 15 minutes or 20 minutes maximum time period. That is the time that you have to allocate for these two chapters because it talks about how the life is there in the human environment, settlement and transportation and communication, especially how the life is there in the tropical areas, deserts. Deserts mein kya hai? Usually people wear long coats when they are wearing a long coats and they always tie a turban on their head. So the temperatures are extremely cold during the night time and during the daytime the temperatures are extremely warm, right? So the plantations which we have already seen that in the deserts the plantations are going to be very deep, the roots are very deep because they are in search of water. Likewise, their dressing is very long coated and the fabric is of synthetic in nature. It is because there are a lot of dust storms that are going to come, so they prefer such a kind of clothing which is a full coat in which if any dust that comes it has to flow through. Along with that, religious affairs are also there, but turban to protect themselves from the heat. And look into their eyes, you will have the scanty eyes. Scanty eyes means they are always half closed eyes you will get to see in the person who is located near to the desert. Why? Because since ages, those dust that was coming from the deserts, they wanted to protect their eyes from the dust. So always they close their eyes half closed. So because of that half closedness in their eyes, they have scanty eyes. So these are some things that you need to look into, how the people are living in a tropical area, how the people are going to live in the polar area. Those observations that are there in the NCERT, apart from that, you also need to look into some other alternative points also, which I will be taking up in the class. Now let me quickly tell you what are we going to cover. We are going to cover majorly class 7, in that human environment and settlement, transportation and communication. This particular chapter is the repetition you will get to see in the class 12 because there are very basics that have been written here. Next, human environment interactions in the tropical and subtropical regions, how the tropical people and subtropical people are live there, and life in the deserts, also life in the tropical, subtropical. Next, come to primary activities, secondary activities, tertiary activities, kya hota hai. I'll explain you this to a beautiful flow chart that is also given in your NCERT. And lastly, you need to know about trade, transport and human settlements. Here, trade and transport, this is full of current affairs. No question will be asked from the NCERT, but your human settlements, the questions can be there. You need to have an idea. Whereas the transport and communication and international trade, here questions will be asked from current affairs. So you need to have an overview on this. Every chapter that is there is not important. Only those chapters that are important that you need to focus, and I will be focusing on those that are important for you. ठीक है, लिस्ट तो बड़ा है बट आपको कुछ ही जगह पे फोकस करना चाहिए. एंड इफ यू आर रीडिंग दीज चैप्टर्स यू विल हैव ए ब्यूटीफुल अंडरस्टैंडिंग फॉर दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक. नाउ let me quickly take you to the names of the chapters. What are they? I'll only run through this particular chapter because in this, how the life is there in the deserts, how the life is going to be there in the tropical, subtropical. These are very, very basics in this. Let me give you an overview. Look at this. How is the life going to be there in the tropical and subtropical region? See, tropical, subtropical are nothing but the areas that you're going to see from 10 degrees north to, these are the areas. Tropical regions are those areas that are present around the Tropic of Cancer, and 10 degrees. This is 10 degrees north, 23, or you can also consider it up to 30. 20 to 30 is called as subtropical, and this is your tropical. Now they are asking how the life in these particular areas are going to be. See, the life in these particular areas are, you come to India, first thing, you look from different dimensions. Here, India is dependent upon the monsoons, right? Majorly, India is dependent upon monsoons. Likewise, in the tropical areas, you also have monsoons or pseudo monsoons that are not fully developed monsoons. You can see in the either places, right? So this area is monsoon dependent. Look at the clothing. Clothing will be those people who are near to the subtropical regions. There, summers will be hot, winters can also be cold. But come to the people who are living near to the equator. You go to Tamil Nadu, all throughout the year, they can wear a lungi and stay, and a t-shirt that will be sufficient for their entire season time period. Across the year, you can wear that dressing. But as soon as you come to the northern part of India, you need winter clothing, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 during the times of winters. And you also need a winter shopping, summer shopping, because temperatures are extreme, right? Likewise, in this particular chapter, what they have written is, they have taken an example that in this particular examples, if you broadly look into that, how do they live? They said that life in Amazon basin kaisa hai? Life in Amazon basin, you look here, these are very brief. You just need to have an idea because no question will be asked from this. This Amazon river, here it moves towards the north like this, right? And in this, it drains into the Atlantic Ocean, right? It drains into the Atlantic Ocean, right? It cuts the equator. It cuts the equator. So people, 10 degrees north to 10 degrees south, this is where your Amazon is present. Can I say your Amazon is present like this? It is present in a latitudes of, this is 10 degrees latitude and this is 10 degrees latitude. This is where most of the Amazon is present, equatorial region. So here, rainfall is going to be there. Humidity kya hoga? Humidity is also high. Humidity is high. Every day there is some good amount of heat. Evaporation of climate will be there. We have learned all about these things in the previous themes as well. So temperatures are hot and humid. Can I say here hot temperatures hoga or humidity bhi zyada hoga? So I'll call it as hot and humid temperatures. This is hot and humid temperatures. And then come to their dressings. How do they wear their dressings? As per their own understandings, right? As per their own climatic understandings. So see here, if the rainfall is good, what kind of forest do you have? In the previous lectures also I told you, there could be forest which can be growing for 60 meters. And then you will also have trees which are present at the lower regions. There is also mid layer. And the species are also dependent upon this kind of forest. Suppose some species are living at the top layer, some species will live at the middle layer, some species will live at the bottom layer. And the birds of this particular region are different from the birds that you see in India. The species that you see here are completely different. Now there is a list of species that you need to know. That is, the list of species are one. Here you will come across a bird like this. This is called as toucans, right? And this is a bird. Likewise, you have anteaters. Anteaters can be seen, right? And tapir. These are unique animals which are present to the equatorial rainforests. So your Amazon is an equatorial rainforest. This is what they say. Here, the clothing is not thick cloth, right? So majority of the area is full of forest, right? When you are having forest, if you have to do agriculture, what kind of agriculture will you be doing? You will be going for a agriculture which is based on shifting agriculture, shifting cultivation. You will cut down the forest, you will burn the forest, and then you do agriculture. After the soil is not, if the soil is not very fertile, you go to a different place and you burn it and you cut it, right? And then you cultivate it. Likewise, you shift So over a period of time, you see the gradual destruction of the forest you will get to see over a period of time. Now this is what they said, that the deserts, and look at the Ganga in this Ganga belt, this is a tropical belt. Now how the life is going to be in this tropical belt, you better know it, because most of you live it here. It is simply monsoon fed, rain fed. The clothing is dependent upon during the times of summer it is going to be hot, during the times of winter it is going to be cold. So winter clothing and summer clothing is going to be there in the subtropical regions. But you go to the southern part of India, as I already told you, you have different kinds of clothing is not there. Different kinds of clothing is not there. When you come to the cultivations, it is intensive subsistence cultivation, you do it, right? Likewise, paddy cultivation, Assam in the tea gardens, the animals are different from what do you see in the northeast, and the animals that you see in the south are different from what you see in the north. So broadly, this is a brief introduction into the life there. Here I don't think there is any explanation that is required. The real explanation lies in this particular chapter, which I'll have to tell you. See, this is deserts. Deserts are those areas where the temperature is high during the daytime, and during the night time the temperature is going to be cold. So here the logic is that the animals which are present in the polar region, they are warm-blooded animals. The animals which are presented near to the equator, they are also warm-blooded animals. But those animals which are present in the desert, majority of them are cold-blooded animals. But what do you mean by this cold-blooded? What do you mean by this warm-blooded? See, cold-blooded means usually these are those animals, if the temperature is hot, their body becomes hot. If the temperature is cold, they will become cold. That means if extreme high temperatures and extreme low temperatures, these species, they cannot live. For example, let's take a lizard. Lizard is a cold-blooded animal. If there is light, from light you will get to see a heat. So this lizard always tries to stay near to the light. Why? Because during the cold times it needs that heat at night time, so that's why it is going to get that heat from the light. So in the deserts also you have so many rodents and you have so many lizard kind of species, in a layman terms if I have to tell you. So what happens is that during the daytime also they will not be active because too much heat will be there. So that's why they go underground. Underground the temperatures are little lower, they make burrows and they'll stay there. Likewise, in the night time also it is very, very extremely cold. So that's why the animals that are present there, what do? You know, they come out in the early mornings and they also come out during the evening time periods where the temperature is neither cold nor warm. That is called as crepuscular. Crepuscular. These crepuscular species are the ones which are found in the deserts, right? So you don't find elephants, you don't find lions, but wherever there is availability of water, you get to see some kind of vegetation. And this vegetation is also present mostly across the oasis. Now you take any oasis, majorly next to this oasis, the population is not too high, and here population would be 200 people or 150 people population will be there. If more population is going to be there, the oasis is not sufficient for them. The desert people, I already told you, they wear the long clothings, and in the long clothings, what do? They go for such a kind of clothing, and which is long coated because they wanted to protect from the dust streams. Likewise, scan the ice. This is what I have told. Now, cultivation, majority of the cultivation is cattle based. Their life is cattle based. They grow the oont, that is camel. They also grow the sheeps. Whatever they get from these cattle, they are going to survive. And lucky is that in these areas there is so much of oil, right? That's why. Now there is also life in the Karakoram, Ladakh and Zanskar region. This is called as a cold desert region. In this cold desert region, people tend to stay. They want to keep themselves warm, so their behaviors are like that. Always they have shrunked shoulders. See, people who are living near to the equator, they'll have broad shoulders because there's so much of heat and they wanted to release the heat, and their body is also little broad. But when you go to the polar regions, in the polar regions, the people are little short. Generally, these people, what do? Is they shrunk their shoulders. They wanted to keep themselves warm. So that's the reason why their shoulders will be short. They are also short people comparatively. Eskimos and all. This is how the lifestyles will also impact. Now, this chapter shall be repeated in the class 12 as well. So we'll directly jump into the primary activities, secondary activities and settlements. So here, the first component that we have to look into is the settlements. Settlements is one of the most important chapter, that is human settlements. Now classification of settlements, rural dichotomy, these are some chapters that are there. Now here I would like to show you different kinds of settlements that are present across the world. See, settlements can be of various types. For that I want you to watch this particular video and see settlements over a period of time has caused what kind of changes on the surface of the earth. I'll step aside so that you can have a watch here. That is, settlements across the globe has made what kind of changes. You watch this video for around 1 minute and let me know what are the changes that you have got to see here. Right? What are the changes that you got to see here? So this is your Bolivia, and the changes in Bolivia from 2000 in the last 30 years, from 40 years, 1984 to 2020. So what changes did you find? You can also drop me a message if you have found any changes in this. Let me know in the comment section if it is available. Else you can let me know that what changes did you find in the Bolivia over a period of time. The changes in the Bolivia are land use pattern. So that means we are going to learn about the settlements, how the settlements has caused the changes over a period of time. Look, the settlement pattern, people started to come here. Right? People started to come here and they started to live here. When they started to live, they also made a significant changes. So what kind of changes did they make there? Did they dry the area, or did they add any economic value to that region? So what exactly it is? These are some things that we have to know. Right? These are some things that we have to know. Right? So look into Madagascar. These are the changes that have been done in the Madagascar. Now all these changes are somewhere around within a span of 20 years. That means human can do magnanimous changes in a matter of few years itself. Yes, there are changes in the riverbeds. There are also changes in the land use pattern, new cultivations. Forests have been cut down. People have started to do agriculture. Right? And this is Bolivia. So what you can think of is, in terms of settlements, what are the major changes that you got to see in this particular settlements? ऐसा कौन सा changes आपको देखने के लिए मिला? This is something which you need to know. Right? So 1984, this is the place of Brazil, that is Mato Grosso. Right? So Brazil's Mato Grosso is completely filled with settlements. Now all of the settlements cause one common change. That is, yes, you let me know. What is it? Exactly. All these changes that will kill the forests. Now in your area also, when you go and check, there could have been many forests that have been got down. But I wanted to ask you one question, that what are the primary factors that will lead to a settlement in a particular region? Why is that the place in which you are living, maybe 50 years before you might not be living in the same area, most of you, I'm telling, the vegetation that was present around, the forest that was present around, maybe it was not there. Right? Maybe some kind of development might have taken place. But there are two different factors that will cause the type of settlement. The settlements are nothing but, here you need to look into what are the major factors that will determine the settlement. The first factor is availability of water. If you have good availability of water, it will rush, people will rush to this particular place. Right? Water supply. Now there are different kinds of settlements, such as one settlement is dry point settlement, other one is wet point settlement. Dry points also attract, wet points also attract. There are also settlements in the dry points, there are also settlements in the wet points. There are cities that have been developed for the defense, there are cities that have been formed for the resource availability, such as the city of Jamshedpur is an industrial city. The city of any city like Bangalore is a resource based city. Mining city Dhanbad. Likewise, precious metals, root centers, bridging points, confluence of two rivers. These are the most preferred places across the world, and they are the ones which will be dominating what kind of settlements you are going to have in a particular area. Right? So these are some things which we need to take into consideration, and let's look into what are the different kinds of settlements that you will come across. See, this is what is your siting factors. Siting factors means if you are given an option to settle at a place which is plain area and also a place which is a mountainous area. Usually the life is very difficult in this part of the region, because even for the basic things they have to spend a lot of energy. But here life is easy, transportation is easy, you can move from one place to another place, economic activities will be more. Only tourism is promoted here, industries can be developed here. Industries, they'll think twice because there can be earthquakes, and people tend to live in large numbers in this part of the area if there is availability of water, dry point settlements, wet point settlements, like that. You go to Nagaland. See, in the Nagaland people used to reside in the top of the hills. See, if you are given an option to stay at a place where, if this is a mountain valley, and you are also given an option to stay at the top of the mountain, or you are also given an option to stay at the valley of a mountain, which one do you prefer? Which one do you prefer? Would you love to prefer to stay in the valley, or would you like to stay on the top of the mountain? एक दो दिन रहने के लिए तो for 1 or 2 days this is quite good, but when you wanted to spend your life here, it is not the top of the mountains that you are going to stay. You have to stay in the valley, because most of the rivers are present in the valleys. Rivers are present in the valleys. These are the valleys, right? And many of the settlements are going to happen over the top, right? See, those people who have security issues, they will stay on the top. You go to Nagaland, there are 16 tribes which are present in Nagaland. There are conflicts of the tribal population. If this is X tribe, this is Y tribe, they are always in fight with each other. For them, the safety area is on the top of the mountain. They choose to settle here because they think that this is where they can live, and they will be more safer. For them, more than resources, their life is important. So that's why the fight for their life is more important. Now here, if you are there in this part of the area, you are going to have a good amount of water. Life is easy, resources can be easy, travel and transportation is easy. Every time you cannot go up and down if you stay on the top of the mountain. So usually the preferable location to settle in the mountains is in the valley. Valley life is easier as compared to mountain life. But as compared to valley, if you have a plain area, you will feel that plain area is a lot more better in leading your life. But in the due process, you will come across that those people who are staying in the mountains, let's say 10 generations stayed in the mountains, then their legs will be stronger because genetically adapted. Those people who are staying in the plain areas, they do a lot of their work with hands if they are doing their day-to-day works. That's why the people who are staying in the mountains, their legs will be stronger, and people who are staying in the valleys, people who are staying in the plain area, their hands will be stronger. This is how you need to interlink with geography and the settlements, right? So let us quickly look into what are siting factors. Siting factors are those factors which influence the settlement of a particular region or a particular person. For example, let's say water is there. If you have water, good availability, you would like to settle in a place where the water is there, and rather not in a place where the water is absent, right? So if a region is a flooded region, then you would like to choose a dry point settlement. Now what do you mean by dry point settlement? See, if this is your water, and okay, if not that, see here, this is a plain area, and imagine there is a river that is flowing near to this plain area. This is a river, right? This is a river which is flowing out of the board. It is flowing out of the board. As the river is flowing out of the board, sometimes if the flow of the river is increased, the river will start to flood. Let's say the river is flooded. Now the river will bring water. So you would always love to choose an area which is higher in nature, and you would like to settle here, right? You would like to settle here because after a month or so, the river stops flooding but still the chances of this particular river might flood in the next year is also there. So that's why you will wanted to move away from the floodplain and you wanted to locate here. So usually dry point settlements are those areas, they will be settled like this. The settlement will be here, and maybe a river might be flowing in this part of the area, right? These are called as dry point settlements. These are called as dry point settlements. So if I am drawing this, it's an indication that river is flowing out of the board. Imagine like that. This is called as a dry point settlement. You will go and stay in the higher heights, right? And if you have a technology, you will pump the water from here to here. And the distance from here to here is maybe 5 kilometers, right? So this is called as dry point settlements. Now what are wet point settlements? Wet point settlements are those settlements which are settled across the floodplains of the river, which are settled across the floodplains. Okay, this is called as wet point settlement. Now I'll show you the wet point settlements across the earth. See here, let's go to the northeastern region. Do you have wet point settlements here? I'll zoom in. This is your river, right? A wet point settlement is something just a minute. Clear? Look here. Are these houses settlements? This is a settlement, right? So this is your river. This is nothing but your river. This is the river, and people are settling just next to these rivers. So here also, can you see settlements? So if there is flooding, what happens? The flood comes outward. So this is called as wet point settlement. Usually seen in the riverbeds of the Brahmaputra. The riverbeds of Brahmaputra. Now let me zoom out. You will have a beautiful understanding to this. Can you see here? This is the river. Now that's a wet point settlement. Like that, you have multiple wet point settlements across, and in tropical areas, this is how the wet point settlements will be there. Most of India, you see, they are chipak ke rehte hai yaar. There's almost, the wet point settlements are like this. Look. Isn't this a wet point settlement? And this is your river. Okay. Now what is a dry point settlement? Dry point settlement means you choose a point where the water do not come. Rather, you'll stay on a high hilly area. Let me show you how exactly this dry point settlement will be there. See, this is settlement based on the raised mound to avoid flooding. So what did you do? You went and settled on a raised mound. Okay? This is what is a valley, and this is your river. So you went and constructed your home here. This is what is your dry point settlement, right? So where do you see these dry point settlements? Usually far away from the river, which you wanted to avoid flooding and all these areas, right? Okay, come to the examples here. Examples is Aiseley Fens, that is Cambridgeshire. This is one of the examples of the dry point settlements. This is in UK. Okay? This is in UK, right? This is what is your UK. Now see, there are cities that can be having defense based cities. Defense based cities are, there are few cities which are built for defense. They think that if staying there, their defense can strengthen. Resources. You go to Dhanbad. Dhanbad is a resourceful city, and resources in the sense you should not confine yourself to the metallic resources. Here, Bangalore is present there because of the resources. Mining. Dhanbad is this precious metals. You go to the precious metals of iron ore is present in where? It is present in Bir Mittarpur. Okay? Likewise, bridging points. where the water gets connected, where you settle the bridges, and next to the bridges you can get to settle. Like that, these are the factors that will influence your settlement, and based on these factors you will have different types of settlements. Now what are these type of settlements? Let's try to look and understand in little more detail. See, the settlement types can be of various type. See here, let me show you. A settlement can be on, a shape of a settlement can be like this. It can have a dispersed settlement also. Look here, if suppose you have two rivers confluencing here, the settlements can be there nearby these two river confluences, right? And this could have been a river and island, one factor. Otherwise, instead of resources such as this is a road and this is a road, people would like to live next to the roads, so this is also a type of settlement. Or else the other type of settlement which will lead to nucleated settlements are like this. In India, most of the villages are located like this. Usually you have a temple. Imagine this is your temple. Temple is considered to be the central part of the village, and around the temple rich class society or Brahmanical society starts to live here, right? This is how. And next, here rich people live next to this open cast, and sometimes like that those people who are dependent on them, they will live here. And far away from the city you will come across there is a tree line, or there is a small forest kind of area, or here also you will have a small forest kind of area, and this forest kind of area you will have few settlements here. Now these are outcast settlements, right, belonging to the backward sections of the society. This is also a settlement. In this temple has led to the development of nucleated settlement. Can I say this temple has led to the development of nucleated settlement, right? And sometimes you will also come across that these people have their farms in this side of the village. The rich person will have his farm near to the village, and the poorest person will have the farm far away from the village. This is his farm or her farm. The poor person who's staying here, they'll have the farm somewhere far away. The rich person will always have their farm nearby, right? So this is also a type of settlement. Nucleated settlements which can be seen. These nucleated settlements, let me show you how are they present in southern part of India. See, you go to any southern part of India, you will come across the villages which are nucleated, where there are densely populated. Let's take a village here. Just a minute. Look here. Isn't this a nucleated village? Now see here, somewhere in the center of the village you might find a temple or a rich landlord. The head of the village will be located in the center, and then people are dependent on that. Maybe this might be the one, I cannot be sure, but this is how the trends and traditions will be there. Like, can I say this is a nucleated village? And in and around you have a very big farmland. These are all farms. So the poorest person of the village, I'm very sure he or she will be having their farmland here, because transportation agar hai, the poor people are the ones who are sent far away. This is also a type of settlement. Now this type of settlement where all the people live next to each other, this is called as nucleated settlement, right? This is called as nucleated settlement. Okay, now come to the next component or different types of settlements that I wanted to show you. A settlement can be nucleated. A settlement can also be dispersed, right? Where do you see this dispersed settlement? You go to the Canada region, Norway, where the population is less. So maybe this person will have his house here and also his farm here. In some parts of the Punjab, you will also find like this. Few parts of Punjab where rich farmers who are there, they will also have this dispersed settlements, right? Where people live far away. There are also reasons for these kind of settlements. Other one is linear settlements. Linear settlements means let me show you the linear settlement across the world. These linear settlements means if you have a river, across the river the settlements can take place. Such as you go to the Pakistan, see here, linear means on the roadside. Look at this Pakistan. This is the line of Pakistan where the Indus river is going. Now can you see the settlements across the Indus are linear? Majority of the population is located across this Indus. This is called as linear settlement. Now where do you find these linear settlements? You'll find these linear settlements either across the road development. You construct a new road. Imagine this is your road and you're constructing a new road, and people will start to come and settle here or across the road. Or else if there is a river, let's take Ganga river. So across the Ganga river you will find the linear settlements. So either across the river or across the roadways or across the railway lines you will come across linear kinds of settlements. Best example is Indus. Indus याद रखो, बाकी काम चल जाएगा एग्जाम में. Right? I hope you are able to get this sense out of whatever I am teaching you. Right? Okay. Now likewise you will find settlements of various patterns. That is, a settlement can be isolated. Isolated settlement is nothing but if a person belonging to this village is thrown out from the village, or outcast people who are untouchably considered, they will also be located isolated. Or else a rich person who wanted to stay away from this village and have his own farmhouse can also create the isolated settlements. Isolated settlements are always difficulty ज़्यादा होता है, and linear settlements are, even if you want to establish a shopping mall, always, or if you want to establish anything, let's say that this is the person who is having a shop, and this person every time has to travel long distances, right? Every time they have to travel long distances for basic services. Imagine the distance is 3 kilometers or 2 kilometers. So there are challenges for this linear settlement also. For isolated, they are dependent on elsewhere. For nucleated, the conditions of caste comes, creed, alag pictures you will get to see here. So every type of settlement has its own problems, right? Clear? Now on this basis, if you look into, the settlements can be of various types. One, there can be a linear type of settlement where there can be a road, a railway line, or a river. Next type of settlement is cross-shaped pattern. Where do you find this cross-shaped pattern? At the junctions. Junctions of what? Maybe you are constructing a road, okay? Cross-sectional road. Likewise, you have star-shaped. When you are constructing a star-shaped road, along the road you will get to see the development of this. Flyovers, wherever you construct flyovers, this is how you get to see. Next is T-shaped. T-shaped is when you are constructing a road, after few years, the settlement has happened here. On either sides, the settlement has taken place. Right? Once this settlement has taken place, now a new road is developed like this to connect this particular road. So people will start to settle here. That means connecting T junctions, you'll get to see the new settlements. And later another settlement has happened. So usually this is T-shaped settlements. And come to the circular pattern. Where do you get to see the circular patterns? Circular patterns are usually seen in South India. Why? Because in the southern part of the India, usually you'll come across a temple. So temple will have a tank. Okay? Temple tanks will be there. It will be like this. If suppose this is temple is located always between the tank, and this tank is full of water, right? Now people will start to settle next to this. They take pride in this temple, and here circular pattern of settlement will start, right? So the rich class Brahmanical society will start to settle, and those people who give their services to this, and in return they take the pride. Likewise, circular pattern will start the circle by circle, right? This is how the development of a particular town or a city takes place. The best example for this is Madurai. Madurai is an example of the tank shaped, rectangular or tank shaped settlements, right? And lastly, double pattern. See, this double pattern is nothing but where flyovers construction. This is also a different types of settlement where you will get to see. Now this can circular pattern, it can be a well, it can be a pond, it can be a temple, right? And if you have bridges like that, then you will have a double pattern settlement, right? So these are the different types of settlements that you'll come across. Now let me show you few more examples for this type. Tell me, what is this type of settlement? It is nucleated settlement. Okay, it is nucleated. Now I'll also show you few other places or few other types of settlements. Now tell me, these are industries, right? So people around industries, if they started to settle, those people who are working on this industry, this is a resource, right? That becomes a resource settlement, right? Which has pollution also. Next, look at this. What is this kind of settlement? It is nucleated. What is this circular pattern? If you have ever visited the Connaught Place in Delhi, is also a circular pattern, right? This is a circular pattern. Come to Hyderabad as a city. See, Hyderabad as a city, I'm giving from the current affairs point of view. This Hyderabad as a city was once only of this size. This was the size of the city, but city started to grow outward. When the city started to grow outward, now they started to build a ring road. This is a new ring road which has been built. So in order to avoid the traffic, outer ring road, they said, now people started to settle around this ring road as well. The settlements happened all over. Now the city wanted to expand, the city started to expand outward again. Now again they started to build a road which is called as outer ring road. So they wanted to make development in this part of the region. In this part of the region they wanted to make a development, right? So like this, a circular city should always grow outward. A city should not grow linearly. If a city is growing in this manner, the development may not be that easy. Look at Mumbai. Mumbai as a city you take, if this is Mumbai, you cannot grow the city on the western side. This side to city grow hi nahi kar sakta. Here city cannot grow. So what do? They'll start to build tall buildings. A city can grow in two types, isn't it or not? City can grow like this. Let's say this is a city. The city can grow outward, right? And a city can also grow vertically by constructing tall buildings, right? Vertically by constructing tall buildings. Now this is called as horizontal sprawl. And this is called as vertical sprawl. Horizontal sprawl or vertical sprawl, right? So the city of Hyderabad is going for horizontal sprawl development, and this is the example of best example which is not there in the NCERTs. You can add it, right? So in a nutshell, this is the new outer ring road which is of 340 kilometers, and they wanted to go for connecting these roads like this. They wanted to connect the roads, 50 radial ring roads like this, and now the settlements will be of this sort. The settlements will go across the linear pattern across the roads, and later this is how the settlements will be growing all around. Got it? And later the settlements will come to the central part. That means first the settlements have grown outward, then they are coming towards. But what about the settlement of a tank or a temple? First temple you build, people will start to settle, then they grow outward. But here this is a planned settlement. So likewise, it is very important on the ground level to understand what kind of settlements you have and how do you want to deal with that, right? Now look at this. This is a rectangular pattern. This is a rectangular pattern of settlement. Now this is a linear pattern of settlement, right? And this is again a nucleated settlement for agriculture. This is a settlement of isolated settlement. This is a resourceful settlement, right? Resourceful settlement. So likewise, you have various kinds of settlements that you need to know. Now this is what is written in your human settlement geography. That is your chapter, one of the most important chapter, right? Classification of settlements in rural and urban. So here, one, compact or nucleated settlements, siting near water, water supply, defense settlements. These are the different kinds of settlements that you are supposed to know, right? Now every city has some functions, every settlement has some functions, every city has some functions. Those are called as functional cities. For example, you take the Delhi, New Delhi. New Delhi is famous for the tourism. It gives you tourism functions. For example, let's go to Goa. Goa sunte, it is all about tourism, right? Now the function of Goa is tourism. For example, there is a city of defense. Okay? That function of a city is to defend first. Likewise, there are cities which have their own functions. That functions, if you take into consideration, they are functions of functional cities. They will be called as a functional cities. Now there are some other terms which you are supposed to know. These terms are nothing but the conurbations kya hota hai, right? These are some things that you need to learn. What are these conurbations? And say, see, there is a new term which I am going to introduce to you. That is, the name itself is conurbation. Now what do you mean by conurbation? See here, when you combine the population of two cities, then that population is called as a conurbation. Now let's go to USA. In USA, when you are moving from one city to another city on the eastern side, right? On the eastern side, if you are moving from this particular city, that is Boston, to New York, if you wanted to move, the distance is somewhere around 3 hours, right? 2 to 3 hours, maan ke chalo. Let's say, imagine, while you are moving from this city to this city, you don't know where the city ends and where the city starts. For example, if you are living in New Delhi, if you are living, and nearby place is called as Gurgaon or Gurugram. So while you are moving from New Delhi to Gurugram, you never know when you have entered into Gurgaon and when you have finished the New Delhi. Why? Because the settlements are so continuous that both the cities have almost merged. Now it feels like this is a one full city, right? If such a kind of scenario is there, we'll call this as conurbation. Conurbation. So conurbation, in India also you get to see conurbations. Where are they found? Let me tell you. But the first conurbation you will get to see here is Boston to New York, and the entire east coast of India is acting like a conurbation, right? See here, you need to know the definition of this particular conurbation as well. So just give me a minute. Let me show you the conurbation of India, which is ranging from Agra. It starts from Agra and till the Kalka, Agra to Kalka region. This is where you will find the conurbations. Just give me a minute. The conurbations of India. So these conurbations are like this. So I put them onto the slide so that you can get it easily. See, what is a conurbation? Conurbation is the population of two or more cities. Now, population of two or more cities when you are combining it. The term conurbation was given by Patrick Geddes in the year 1915 and applied a large area of urban development, that resulted from the merging of, originally separated towns or cities. In simple terms, Great London, Manchester, Chicago are the examples. Or else in India also a new conurbation that is under development. In the next 15 odd years, what happens is that if you are traveling from Agra and you wanted to reach to either Kalka or Saharanpur, आपको ऐसा लगेगा this entire region has no end to a city and a new city started. You don't even know when it started and when it ended, right? So here in totality, it is like this. Number 1, Agra, Mathura, then Faridabad, Delhi, Gurgaon, Sonipat, Panipat, Karnal, and then till Kalka, Chandigarh, right? That means in the future, this is a new conurbation which is going to be developed in India. Likewise, from Delhi to Saharanpur. This Saharanpur is also a sugarcane growing region, right? This is what is you need to know with respect to conurbation. This is one term which is there. Apart from that, there is also a city by the name million plus city. See, this million plus city is nothing but a city which is having a 10 lakh plus population. That is called as a million plus city, right? So these are some terms that you need to know in this particular chapter. I think you had a brief understanding into these areas, right? That is what you have to know with respect to settlements, right? In the settlements can be of various patterns, and the factors that determine the settlements are siting factors and situation factors. So what is this siting factors and situation factors? For one last time, let me quickly give you a reminder to you. It is siting factors, मतलब यहाँ पे क्यों settle करना चाहिए? What are the conditions that are influencing? Sometimes if you are living in Himalayas, the southern facing slopes can be a siting factor for you. What are these southern facing slopes? Southern facing slopes means if you are living in the Himalayan region, you would like to stay on the southern slopes, because the south facing slopes will have more sunlight. Look here, in India, if this is the north, this is south, east, west, right? If suppose there is a mountain, this is a mountain, can I say this is the south side of the mountain? It is like this. See here, if this is a mountain, let's say this is the back side is north of the mountain, this is south of the mountain, this is east, this is west. So usually sun rises and then it starts to go towards the west. Sun rises and goes towards the west. Basically, the south facing slopes will receive little more sunlight as compared to the north facing slopes. It is not just in India, also in Europe or elsewhere, because from the north, if you look, there are very cold winds that will be coming during the times of winters. It is like this. Look here. Suppose you have a mountain here. The mountain's south side is this, east side is this, west side is this, north side is this, right? West is this, east is this, south is here, and north is here. So my question here is, which side would you like to go and settle? Usually you would always prefer to settle in India and in Europe on the southern side. You wanted to settle up here, south side, right? Or southeastern directions, or you wanted to settle in the northeastern directions, but not on the north side. Why? Because during the times of winters, there will be cold winds that will be coming, and these cold winds would like to give you chills on the northern side. When you have chills on the northern side, instead, the temperatures will be very cold on the northern side. And if you have a mountain on the southern side of the mountain, you have a sun. This sun, what does it do? Sun rises and then moves to the west. In the due process, the southern slopes will receive more sunlight as compared to northern slopes, so it is little warm. So this is also the same case in the Alp mountain regions. These are your Alps, okay? Swiss Alps. So here, these Swiss Alp mountains, the north winds are cold winds, and the southern winds, here the sunlight is more in the southern slopes. So that's why people would like to go and settle in the southern slopes. This is also the finest example which you can use in the examination, right? So see here, right? This is aspect and shelter are two of the most important factors that were considered when deciding where to locate in a settlement. So usually the settlements in the mountains, they choose south, and this is your Alp mountains, settlements in the south facing of the Alps, right? they are located on the south facings. You go to Ladakh also, same is the case. They also locate on the southern sides. They don't like to go on to locate on the northern sides. So this is the content that you need to know with respect to settlements. And one more thing I wanted to show you, that world population is mostly located where? The world population is mostly settled across the coastal areas. Look at Australia. The settlement of the Australia, you will come across that they are always on the coast. Okay? The settlement is on the coastal area. Coastal city, coastal city, coastal city, coastal city, coastal city. Likewise, the settlement is always on the coast. Why coast? You let me know. Why not on the continental area? Because your Australia is 2/3 of Australia is desert. This is desert, right? Only 1/3 of Australia, this is where you can live with ease. Okay, come. You have done with this particular entity, and here I would like to tell you that there are other chapters which you are supposed to know. That is regarding the primary activities. This is one chapter. What are primary activities? What are secondary activities? This is secondary activities kya hai? And what are tertiary activities? And transport and communication in detail you are supposed to know. Right. Now let's try to understand what are primary activities and what exactly is given in this particular entity. In the last session of agriculture, I have given you a brief idea that there are people who will be moving from one region to another region in the search of agriculture. That is called as shifting cultivation. Your primary activities include, that is the primary production of the basic necessities for the living, such as you wanted to produce gathering of food, right? Or edible plants, say you wanted to generate the income. So the income that you wanted to generate from agriculture, the income that you want to generate from the animals, and to an extent it is on the mining. Mining is also taken as a primary entity. So in totality, human activities which generate income known as economic activities, and in this economic activities are broadly grouped into primary, secondary and tertiary. In the primary, you will come across the sheeps who are rearing the sheeps. This is nothing but the nomadic cultivation which I have taught you. Next, the cultivation which is there, women that generally go for gathering food and gatherings, right? So majority of this particular subsistence agriculture, that is food and gathering, is seen in the areas of tropical regions and in the polar regions, where the climates you get to see, these are the areas where you will get to see in the equatorial region and in the northeastern region and the polar region. In yesterday's class itself, we have learnt in a detailed manner what are primary activities. Primary activities are your farming, or in the last session, that is farming. This farming can be done in various types. Organic farming kar sakte ho. You can also do subsistence agriculture. You can do dairy farming. You can also go for the mixed cropping, like that, mixed farming. So these are some things that you can look as the primary activities. So let's see. Pastoralism, nomadic herding is a primary activity. Commercial livestock is a primary activity. Agriculture, subsistence agriculture, we have seen all of this yesterday, right? In the last class, right? Areas of primitive subsistence agriculture we have seen. We have also talked about the zooming cultivation. Where is this zoom cultivation done? Where is the Mipla in the Central America it is done? And also the Ladang, where is it? It is in the Indonesia equatorial region, the shifting cultivation. Now let me show you what we have already looked into is the different types of agriculture. That is nomadic herding. It is also a part of primitive agricultural types. आज भी उनके पास technology नहीं है. This nomadic herding, people move from one place to another place. In the last class I told you that in India also you have Gaddis. Gaddis are a similar kind of tribes. That is in the Himachal region and the Jammu and Kashmir region you will get to see, right? Gaddis, nomadic herding, this is how they do. This is also part of primary activity. Likewise, you, just a minute. Okay, our boards. Now, dairy farming or livestock ranching. Let me quickly give a glimpse onto what we have seen in the last class. Livestock ranching, can I say this is also a part of the primary activities? Yes, it is also a part of primary activities. So here you'll come across the different names that we have already learned in yesterday. Yes, Chen, Tonga, Milpa, Central America, Ladang, we have seen these are the areas. हम कल भी देखा था. Rudimentary tillage मैंने कहा था, only the rudimentary tillage is done in those areas where you do not have technology. This is also primary, and this is the area of subsistence agriculture, intensive subsistence farming. So all these things comes under the primary activities, that is subsistence, crop living. So ये सारे mixed farming भी primary activities में आता है. In simple terms, what are primary activities? Primary activities are those which are dependent upon the agriculture, plantation and the mining as well, right? These are primary activities. So in India, the contribution from the primary sector is how much of GDP? This is what I want you to know. Please let me know the contribution of primary, secondary and tertiary sectors. Tertiary sector is service sector. It is more than 67% of our, currently more than 65% of our income comes from the tertiary sector. So this dairy farming I have already shown you. And we have discussed all of these agricultural types, they fall under the primary activities. So I won't be spending much time into this particular area. We'll quickly jump towards what is the secondary activities. Secondary activities includes industries, right? Secondary activity includes industries. Now these industries came to India only after the innovation of steam engine. In the modern era, the biggest innovation that you can think of is an industry. But can you tell me the difference between, what is the difference between manufacturing and an industry? What is the difference between manufacturing and industry? You might have come across these words, but let me know what is the difference between manufacturing and industry. See, manufacturing industry are not same. They are two different entities. Manufacturing means it is you make something with the hand. Initially, the word manufacturing came from you make something from the hand, and then if you are making that, that is called as manufacturing, right? Even if you are making by a machine, you will not call it as an industry. For example, you can make this shirt by using your hand. You can also make this shirt by a person who can buy the sewing machine at your home and then can stitch this. Do you call that as an industry? If suppose in your own village, or you bought a cloth, and if you're a woman or a man, you wanted to stitch that cloth, and you went to a shop and you asked, Bhai Sahab, please stitch this shirt for me, or please stitch this suit for me. Now stitching using a machine, or you made that particular product by using a machine, will that be an industry? No. Then what is industry? And how is it different from manufacturing? See, in the initial time periods, manufacturing means something which is used to be made by hand. Later on, that handicrafts have been converted into, instead of hands, machines started to make. Maybe the shirt which you used to make by hand, later machines came into picture. Even when machines started to make, we don't call it as an industry. It is still a manufacturing. Industry means when you are manufacturing and you bring books of accounts into the manufacturing. That means there are few things that you are supposed to look into while you are dealing with the manufacturing. That is nothing but if something is manufactured and this manufacturing is done in a large scale, right? Plus you bring management to deal with this, plus you bring in the books of accounts. Books of accounts means how much is going, how much is coming, at the same time what kind of taxes you pay, and together all of this you will call it as an industry. An industry, a manufacturing becomes an industry when it is streamlined. A manufacturing of a shirt becomes an industry when it is produced in a large quantity, in large numbers, and the labor which is involved, you have to use management to that. Plus whatever the bookings or profits, losses, the buying and selling, as well as the stock that need to be put into books of accounts, and they need to file the taxes. This is when a manufacturing becomes an industry. When does a manufacturing becomes industry? A manufacturing becomes an industry when you bring in management and you maintain a books of accounts. This is called as the manufacturing or industry, right? Now here you need to know the classification of this secondary sector, the classification of secondary sector. This classification is very unique. Let me show you the classification of this particular sector. It is like this. Let me give you in a detailed term about this classification. First, classification of industries based on the class. Industries can be classified on various bases, or the secondary sector can be classified into various types. First, on the basis of the size, right? Is it a small, medium, large? So you call this as medium, small and micro enterprises, right? This is called as medium, small and micro, medium and small enterprises. MSME kabhi suna hai? Have you ever heard of a term called MSME? Have you heard of a small scale industry? Have you heard of a large scale industry? On the basis of size in the sense that is how many workers as well as what is the capital. And there can also be a cottage industry, which is nothing but your household industry. An industry can be divided on, or secondary sector can be divided in on the basis of size, that is cottage industry, small scale industry, large scale industry. On what basis are you going to divide? What is a small scale industry? What is a large scale industry? What are the definitions that you need to know? Let me again show you how do you get to know the industry which is there. Is it a small scale industry or is it a large scale industry? There are also certain kinds of definitions. Now let me show you these definitions that are there in India. The MSME sector, it takes into account this. When do you call a particular sector as small, micro and medium? See, you will call a particular sector as micro, that is in terms of manufacturing, if you have the investment of up to 1 crore rupees or less, or else a turnover of less than 5 crore. You are called as a micro. Small matlab when you have an investment of up to 10 crores, right? Up to 10 crores or less than a turnover of 50 crores. If you are having anything more than this, then you will be called as the medium. Up to 20 crores, right? It is investment is 20 crores and turnover less than 100 crores. This is what is called as micro, small and medium, and this is different from different sectors, such as service sector के लिए different है micro, medium and small. The definitions keep on varying from on the basis of your sector, right? Micro, small and medium. Now this is the first classification of your industries. Now come to the second classification. This second classification is based on, just a minute, the inputs. You can also draw this. Okay? Second classification is based on the inputs. What kind of inputs do you give? There can be an industry which is based on agriculture. Suppose if I take a crop, and if I am growing this crop, I am converting this crop into powder and I am selling this powder into the market by packaging it. That is called as agro-based industry, right? Such as here, this crop can be my sugarcane, right? Or this crop can be a sugarcane. From the sugarcane, I have extracted the juice, and the juice I am converting into a sugar, and then my sugar can be an agro-based industry. Like that, sarso ki tel, that is mustard soil, I am extracting and I am selling it. It is an agriculture-based industry. My raw material here is agriculture, right? The next form of inputs that you can take into account is minerals. Here minerals are of two different types. One, you already know, metallic. Other one is non-metallic. Metallic can be further divided into on the basis of the ferromagnetic substances and the non-ferromagnetic substances. See here, ferromagnetic means one which has an iron. Through this, I can set up an iron ore industry. Iron industry. From, if I add manganese to this, this will become steel. It will become an alloy. Likewise, non-ferromagnetic means copper, aluminium. And then comes to non-metallic industry, that is mica, limestone, sandstone. These are some of the non-metallic industries, and cement can also be a part of it. The next classification will be the chemical based. If your raw material is chemical, here You know that where do you find oil? Oil is found across the regions of the continental shelf or in the area where there was water which was submerged for few years. And oil से आप plastic भी बना सकते हो. You can also create the petrol, diesel, the plastic materials and some kind of petroleum based products. That means this is also your chemical based industry, right? Sanitizers are also part of this. Okay, these are also based on chemical industry. Next, come to the forest based industry. This is like timber. Okay, timber. If your raw material is animal, then animal based industry will be your leather. And दुनिया का सबसे बढ़िया quality leather कहाँ मिलता है? It's in Africa. Right? So these are the classifications of industries. Now come to the output. On the basis of output, it can be basic or consumer good. Basic good means those which are necessary and essential and that can build an other output product. For example, you take iron. Iron helps in the construction. Iron helps in building something. From that, you can generate some more income out of it by setting up an industry within that iron constructions that you have done. So this iron and steel are considered to be basic industries which are necessary for each and every sector, whereas consumer goods are nothing but biscuits hai, textiles hai, right? Likewise, food products which are there, these are consumer goods as per the need and requirements, that is based on the consumption, right? Based on the consumption. And the last one is here on the basis of public private partnership. Ownership, it can be public, it can be private, it can be government. At times it can be public plus government, or it can be hybrid annuity model. It can also be public sector, private sector, joint sector, or hybrid annuity models. You can also bring in multiple ways of ownership. So an industrial sector can be classified into these types. I'll step aside and I want you to watch this for a minute or 30 odd seconds, and please try to imbibe the content that you are going through. Please try to take in the content that you have gone through. Okay. See, again, once let me quickly repeat it. That is, industries can be classified into on the basis of your ownership, number one. It can also be based on the usage. Is it basic or is it consumer? Number three, on the basis of raw material. The raw material based is, are you giving agriculture as a raw material? Are you giving minerals as a raw material? Are you giving chemicals as a raw materials, or forest, animals, whatever it is? And the last one is size. Is it micro, small, medium or large? Right? So this is what is the agriculture. Now come to the next chapter, that is your tertiary sector. In the tertiary sectors, here tertiary and quaternary activities. See, this tertiary and quaternary activities are nothing but your service based. Be it a doctor, be it a teacher, the service that I am giving you, it falls into the tertiary sector, right? Any service that you are giving, it falls into the tertiary sector. Or beyond that, if you are using technology beyond service, that comes under the quaternary sector. So, and quinary sector, beyond that what? So here a vegetable market can be like that, or your communication, your software companies, all of them are taken into this particular chapter itself. So lastly, look here in this, what are the major classifications that you get to see here? Let me put that into a chart, and again let's quickly deal with that. Only classifications are some things that you need to learn. See, your service sector can be divided into one tertiary based on your tertiary activities, based on your quaternary activities and quinary activities as well. What is the fundamental difference between quaternary and quinary? See, in quaternary, you are going to go for beyond service, research and development also you do it. But when it comes to quinary, here you develop specialists. Specialists will be there in that particular service. Extreme specialists will be there, high quality specialists. Research and development ke saath, if you have specialists, the decision makers, they come under the quaternary activities, right? Yes, policy formulas. If someone is making a policy, that comes not under the quaternary, it will not come under the tertiary, it will be coming under the quinary sector. So let's try to understand the tertiary activities. You already know that tertiary activities means it is nothing but your trade and commerce. Okay? Let's say it is trade and commerce. Trade and commerce. This trade, whatever is manufactured, see, manufacturing is done by the secondary sector. Whatever is manufactured, now buying and selling, that is commerce, transportation, all of it comes under tertiary activities. The first component is trade and commerce. Within this trade and commerce, they can, from a factory, they can give it to a retailer. Let's imagine this is a factory. From the factory, they can give it to the retailer. They can also give it to a wholesaler. From the wholesaler, you can go for urban supply, or you can also give it to the rural area. Likewise, from the retailer can go out and give it to a house to house basis. Rural areas, urban areas bhi de sakte hai. Likewise, the retailer makes a very good profit. The ultimate aim of this service sector is again also to make it, the ultimate aim of the manufacturing sector is to produce large and make the cost little cheaper and serve the labor and make the profits. Service sector is give the service to the product that is provided and then make profits out of it. So here the first thing that you need to know is wholesaler and retailer in the trade and commerce. From here you will come across urban areas and rural areas, right? In the rural areas, what do the retailer do? He'll go on a Luna or he'll go on a bike and he'll start to distribute periodically in the regions, right? Periodic markets and storages that particular person will do. When it goes to the urban areas, there are some malls, there are also supermarkets. So they'll put into the malls, chain stores, convenience shops, and like this, right? So this is also your service sector. That is also trade and commerce. But when it comes to the transport can be rail, railway, airways, waterways, right? Rail, road, waterways, airways. Now this waterways can be inland and international trade also, right? Waterways can be inland in India, inland waterway. A small homework for you, the national waterways 1 to 8. Please go and look into the national waterways, that is NH1, National Waterway 1, Allahabad to Haldia. So what are the national waterways which are inland waterways? Inland waterways India में जो top 5 waterways I want you to know. Basically you will also get to see in the Allahabad to Haldia. Likewise you will also have the Buckingham Canal as well as in the Kerala, in the eastern coast as well. So I want you to do this small homework on your own and let me know the top inland waterways in India. That I'll also do in the resource and development chapter of India in the last theme, right? But before that, if you have that enthusiasm, please go and look into the Google or you find out what are the major waterways which are there in inland, right? Oceanic, it is cargo service bhi ho sakta hai, passenger service bhi ho sakta hai, ferry service also. And when I look into the transport sector, I'll discuss this. These two I'm going to discuss in little more detail, right? These two I'll discuss in little more detail. So once let's quickly look into this oceanic, the waterways. How is this transport is being dealt? See, this transport sector, if you look into, you have ports, right? These ports can be helping in international trade. Now there are different types of ports. This is where the examiner can ask you. The different ports are of these types. Let me quickly show you what are the different types of ports. See, the different type of ports are, some ports are meant for oil transport, some ports are meant for passengers, some ports are meant for the call-on ports. Maybe a person is traveling from X to Y place, in between they need some fuel, so they have to come here and stop and then they go. That means this port is giving a service. So this comes under transportation service itself. So what are the different kinds of ports that are present across the world? This is what you need to know. Now ports can be divided on the basis of various factors. The first factor that will determine the ports is on according to the cargo handling. So cargo, do they handle in the inland or do they handle on the coastal area? So the first one is inland ports. Okay? Inland ports and industrial ports. See, this cargo can be handled in the inland. Inland ports, if suppose this is India is there, within that you have Allahabad to Haldia. This is an inland port, right? Now this inland port can be of industrial in origin. This can be let's say this is a port. They can be used for industrial purposes. Maybe a goods which are produced here, they can be transported to this port. Maybe they are used for the passenger purposes. They can be used for commercial purposes. They can be comprehensive ports. So basically, the division of ports can be seen both in the inland. Let's say this is your inland port, and you can also have a port here. Both of these ports, they can go for industrial dealings, commercial ports, and comprehensive ports, right? Okay, see, you are learning about the inland ports and the ports that are at the coastal area, that is one which serves the coastal areas. Here, based on according to the cargo handled, how much cargo and for what purpose they can handle, within the inland also you can have commercial, you can industrialize industrial purposes के लिए or comprehensive purposes के लिए. Likewise, if Jawaharlal Nehru port is there here, it can also be an industrial port, it can also be a commercial port, it can also be a comprehensive port. It depends on how you are handling the cargo. So the first industrial port means these are specialized to handle the bulk cargo. Example, such as sugar, oil, chemicals, right? India में सारे ports industrial ports हैं, ठीक है? Commercial, they are also commercial ports. Such as these ports handle general cargo, packed products and manufactured goods. These ports are also handling traffic. Next is comprehensive ports. Such ports handle bulk and general cargo in large volumes. Most of the world's great ports are classified as comprehensive ports. Basically, Jawaharlal Nehru port is of this type, and Mundra port. Here, passenger traffic port, you go to Goa, the Goa port and Marmagaon port. In these two ports, they are Marmagaon port, and in the Andaman Nicobar port, Blair port. So these ports, they are also used as the passenger commercial ports as well. The next type of ports are based upon the location. Okay, location I already told you, inland and outland. Inland ports, they can be used for these three purposes. Likewise, outland ports are nothing but coastal areas which can be used for same. The next type of ports on the basis of specialized functions. Specialized functions are nothing but, so usually you go to these areas, the Gulf region. You go to the Gulf region. In the Gulf region, you'll come across many of the ports are oil ports. Their special purpose is to deal in the oil. Okay? All of this special purpose is to deal in the oil itself. So they are your Gulf ports. Just let me show you. They are oil ports. Next is port of calls. What is this port of calls? Singapore is the finest example for this port of call. Right? In Singapore, for example, if this is your India and the Middle East wants to do trade with the Russia, let's say Russia or China. Okay? China wants to do trade with these people. But the distance is so long, right? What do? While they travel, they need some resources. They also need some fuel. So while they go all around, they stop somewhere in Singapore, and Singapore will get or give services to these areas, and after that the port will go back to the same area. So the port of calls are ports which originally developed as calling points on main routes where ships used to anchor for refueling, watering and tanking food items. Later they developed into commercial ports, right? Eden, Honolulu as well as Singapore. That means the main purpose of the Singapore port was initially to give services, right? These services which they used to give little later, now this particular port, not just this, see there are many places including Africa. See, when these ports, they were traveling of such large distances, they stop here, they take oil, food and other aspects, and then this port will be called as the port of call, right? So India is also trying to develop a port of call in the Andaman Nicobar, but we are not yet successful. In the further time period, maybe, yes. Now come to packet stations. See, these packet stations are also called as ferry ports. Ferry ports matlab basically जहाँ distance छोटा होता है ना, whenever you have the distance, small distances from this is point A, this is point B, the distance is only 50 kilometers, right, or 30 kilometers. You go to English Channel, 1 घंटा लगता है. So basically, if short distances are used for commercial activities or passenger transportations, tourism transportations, now this particular ports, Dublin port, Holyhead port, these ports are called as the packet stations, right? Example, Dover in England and English Channel ports which are there, right? So all these are packet stations. छोटे छोटे packet stations कहा जाता है, packet ports और ferry ports कहा जाता है, right? Very small stations they'll have, basically commercial mailings, and if you want to transport something in small quantity, right? In Europe it is very famous. Now the last two different types of ports are, one is that is entry port. See this entry port, Singapore is also an entry port for the Asia. Basically what do they do is, instead of going across a continent, for example, you see this is your India, okay, and somewhere here this is Singapore, but in the Singapore, if you are releasing your goods from Singapore, you can spread these goods to all the other different countries, right? Instead of you taking your ship and dropping at each of these ports across the world, rather you take this ship and drop them at Singapore. From Singapore you will disperse to the rest of the world. So basically entry ports are those where the materials are bought from different countries, they are put at one single place, and from here the distribution takes place. Now Singapore is acting as an entry port for the Asia. The material from Africa, the material from Europe is bought and put at Singapore. From Singapore it is dispersed to the Asia. This is what is called as entry port. Last one is naval ports, where the tri-service command you will get to see in India, or also the ships or the ports which are used for the purposes of defense, right? So these days we cannot develop ports at every place, so that's why we are converting our own ships into ports where you can also land the aeroplanes wherever required. Take a defense aeroplanes. So these are the different kinds of ports. All of these ports you will be putting them under what? You will be putting them under the service category. You will put all of these ports under the service category, that is service sector of transport. Right? Now come to communication. See, this communications here includes one, means of transportation, telecommunication, that is through telephones, be it landline and mobile services, Airtel or any services, that is also service sector. Likewise, audio visuals, your radio, TV, ticket, digital platforms, Netflix, you are buying something, that is also put into your service sector. So this is very easy. And the last category is the proper service sectors, such as financial services, insurances that you are buying, or financial banking services. You have a bank account, for that you pay some premium every year for the card that you have, or you put your money into the bank will pay you interest, or you take a loan, you are paying an interest. All these services will be calculated, but in these transactions there is some economy that is generated that will be put into the service sector, right? Lastly, real estates also, professional services like आजकल coaches hai, doctors hai, if you are taking a personal mentorship from me, or else if you are paying me fees, that is private, government or NGO, all of them comes under the service sector. Now come to quinary sectors and quaternary sectors. See, this quaternary sectors includes research and development. If you are doing any laboratory research, and the cost that went into that research will be put into the service sector, and any cost that you are, any funds that you are generating, that also be put into the quinary sector. One is based on information, second is based on research and development, and the third is today's the research and development is also artificially intelligence based, which is done in the laboratories, right? I'm not talking on the devices, it is done in the laboratories. Today the research and development is not just done on the devices, it is there in the laboratories as well. Now the technology itself is into laboratories, that is also AI based laboratories are also your quaternary sector. But when it comes to the expertise, specializations in the service sector is your quinary activities. In simple terms, you have a consultancy agency and you have a proficiency. For example, you have problems in writing UPSC examinations, so you have come to me as an expert and I give you professional services and I'll give you consultancy. Or else an ex-person has come to me and asked, sir, aap geography अच्छा जानते हो, you know more about geography, I need your expertise and I need your consultancy for setting up an XYZ thing. If I give my services of my expertise, that will be falling into the quinary sector, right? If I give my services as a consultant, that falls into the quinary sector. Likewise, policy formulators, decision makers, they also fall into your quinary sector. In a nutshell, this is what is your service sector. So it can be divided into tertiary, quaternary and quinary, trade and commerce of tertiary, transport of tertiary, communication and services of tertiary. Quaternary, information based, research based, artificial intelligence, laboratory based. Quinary sector also takes the specialist, decision makers, policy formulators and consultants into account. Now lastly, here there are some entities of transportation and other service agents that are you need to look into is the chapter of transportation. See, in this transportation chapter, there are some important aspects. I'll show you what are they. You need not go and read each and everything, but you definitely need to remember these things. One, the major transportation lines, sometimes examiner can focus here. That is, one, you need to know about Trans-Siberian Railway. What is this Trans-Siberian Railway? This Trans-Siberian Railway is connecting all the way from St. Petersburg to the easternmost point, that is Vladivostok, right? There is a railway that have been developed. Initially it was there till Moscow, but later they have connected it. So Moscow tak connect karne ka, this is your capital city, right? Now the Trans-Siberian Railway connects the Vladivostok to the Moscow and St. Petersburg, right? This is called as Trans-Siberian Railway. Like that, you also have the Trans-Australian as well. See, this Trans-Australian will start from Melbourne to Perth. So this is the longest railways that you will come across in the world. Likewise, in India also you have the Diamond Quadrilateral. What is this Diamond Quadrilateral in India? If you see Delhi, Chennai, Bombay, Hyderabad and Kolkata, you connect these cities and it looks like a diamond, right? So you have diamond quadrilaterals in India. Likewise, you also have roadways which are having connectivity. Our roadways are, that is Delhi, again Bombay, this is your Chennai and this is your Kolkata. So this is called as golden quadrilateral. The road that connects these four cities are called as golden quadrilaterals. You have a road that is connecting from almost Jammu and Kashmir till the Kanyakumari, Amritsar to Kolkata. So these are some of the important roads and you need not know in detail about the road numbers because government khud hi confused hai with respect to should I name it as NH5, NH2, NH7, NH8 or should I have to name it as per the new norms. So when the government itself is confused about the nomenclature of should I go for a new nomenclature or old nomenclature, in this case you can calm yourself. You need not know much about the road numbers in India, but definitely you need to know which is the biggest road in India, and this is a small homework, which is the biggest road in India and the widest road in India. Please let me know in the comment sections or if you get an opportunity, right? And this is what you need to know about this particular theme. And in the next theme, we shall be covering in little more detail. Next theme is going to be explanatory about populations. We are going to learn a lot about India because these are some basics. So इस basics में कुछ जगह मजा नहीं आया होगा. I definitely know because NCERTs भी ऐसी है. Geography is like this where this is very raw content that is there. You just need to accept this raw content. Don't worry. In the further classes, we are going to make little more interesting and apply all the concepts that we have learned. We are going to do with the resources of India, and in this we will be covering all the other aspects. Thank you. In the further classes, we shall be dealing with more topics. Thank you and see you.